In world history, there exists one particularly persistent and deeply rooted prejudice that, unfortunately, can be found even in highly reputable sources, popular educational channels, and ancient historical chronicles. Very often, the story of the fate of countless great cities, wealthy cultures, and even entire states ends with the same short but extremely destructive phrase, "And then the Arabs came and destroyed everything." It is precisely because of this approach that, for a huge number of people, the era marking the rise of Islamic civilization and the dominance of the Arab world is firmly associated with the notion of the Dark Ages, supposedly a period of total decline, when the brilliant achievements of Greco-Roman antiquity were finally lost, replaced by a bleak, backward, and cruel era. But in reality, things were entirely different, my friends. In fact, they were the exact opposite. It was thanks to the so-called Golden Age of Islam that the greatest intellectual treasures of ancient Rome and Greece were not only preserved but truly safeguarded and expanded. Moreover, it was these efforts by Muslim scholars that allow us today to enjoy the fruits of technical and scientific progress. In the next few minutes, we will examine this in detail and see that this is not an exaggeration, but a well-grounded historical reality. Let's first clarify the exact time frame we are talking about. The infamous Dark Ages, which Western historiography loves to write about, generally cover the period roughly from the 8th to the 13th century. Meanwhile, in the East, there existed the powerful Arab Caliphate, one of the largest and most influential states on the planet. And here it is important to emphasize, we are not only talking, and not even mainly, about the colossal territories, which could rival the size of the Roman Empire at its peak. Far more important was what happened within this space, the level of culture, the daily life of ordinary people, the education system, and scientific achievements. The unified Muslim cultural sphere stretched from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, in the west to the farthest borders of China in the east. Therefore, it is particularly frustrating and unfair to hear claims that the Arabs supposedly destroyed all cultural heritage of previous civilizations, bringing in only harsh laws, fanaticism, and cruelty. In reality, cities like Baghdad, Cairo, Damascus, Bokhara, Samarkand, Khwarezm, and many others became true world-class metropolises during that era. And it was not just the population size that was impressive. These cities primarily astonished people with their extraordinary level of urban culture, science, literature, architecture, and everyday intellectual exchange. Let's start with science, for it was here that the Golden Age of Islam shone especially brightly. Across the vast caliphate, near major mosques, special educational institutions called madrasas were established. These institutions did not teach only religious disciplines. They also taught secular sciences, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, logic, and much more. In essence, these madrasas became the first prototypes of modern universities, although not all of them received official university status in the European sense. There is a rather amusing and telling historical fact related to this. If you open Wikipedia and look at the list of the oldest universities in the world, almost all of them are European. The University of Bologna, founded in 1088, then Oxford, the University of Paris, and others. However, if you check, for example, the Guinness Book of Records, you will immediately find that the oldest continuously operating higher education institution in the world is the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in the Moroccan city of Fez. It was founded in 859 by Princess Fatima Al-Fihri, right in the middle of the Golden Age of Islam. If we dig even deeper and look for information about ancient universities and academies in Baghdad, the cultural shock at the level of education among Muslims at that time is simply overwhelming. Already from the 820s, the capital of the Caliphate hosted the famous Academy Beit al-Hikmah, better known as the House of Wisdom. It was a grand intellectual center where knowledge from all over the world was collected, translated, and developed. But dry dates and names are only the beginning. Far more impressive are the actual scientific achievements of that era. Take, for example, the famous Avicenna. His real name was Abu Ali ibn Sina. Almost everyone has heard of him. Most people immediately say, "Ah, the great physician!" And they would be absolutely right. Avicenna lived from 980 to 1037, was born in the territory of modern Uzbekistan, and became one of the brightest representatives of the Golden Age. His seminal work, The Canon of Medicine, is rightly considered the first truly modern medical encyclopedic guide. It was translated into almost all European languages, and students in medieval universities studied medicine using it, even up to the mid-17th century. Avicenna was the first to clearly distinguish veins from arteries, introduced the concept of disease symptoms, emphasized the enormous importance of hygiene, physical exercise, and a healthy lifestyle for maintaining health, described methods of joint dislocation treatment, and much more. At the same time, he actively studied and utilized ancient Greek medical manuscripts. Another interesting fact: a significant portion of Greek and Roman scientific texts reached Europe precisely through Arabic translations and adaptations. Without the Golden Age of Islam, much of ancient knowledge would have been irretrievably lost. Another convincing example is the scholar Ahmad al-Farghani, Alphagonus, a native of the Fergana Valley who worked in the 9th century at the very House of Wisdom in Baghdad. He was a passionate admirer of Ptolemy and his monumental work, Almagest, a true encyclopedia of astronomical knowledge from the ancient world and the Middle East. Al-Farghani did not merely translate the Almagest. He extensively revised it in light of the latest technical achievements of his time, corrected several inaccurate calculations, scientifically justified the Earth's sphericity, and provided a wealth of invaluable material. So valuable, in fact, that by the 13th century, his work was translated into Latin, and European astronomers relied on Al-Farghani's work for the next 7 centuries. From astronomy, let's move to mathematics. We are all familiar from childhood with the term Arabic numerals. In fact, the Arabs themselves called them Indian, and in Arabic script, these numbers look quite different. But the point is this: it was from the Islamic world that the decimal positional system and the modern approach to mathematics came to Europe. In ancient Greece and the early Middle Ages, mathematical calculations were often expressed in words, geometric figures, or even poetic forms. Muslim mathematicians made a colossal contribution to the way we formulate, record, and solve problems today. The very terms, algorithm, and algebra, come from the name of the great scholar Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, another head of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, who worked alongside al-Farghani. Thanks to al-Khwarizmi, algebra became a separate discipline. The word, algebra, comes from Al-Jabr, the title of one of his key works. He created trigonometric tables, developed universal methods for solving linear and quadratic equations, introduced the concepts of sine and cosine, and much more. His books were translated into Latin and became the foundation for the scientific rise of the Renaissance, preserving the achievements of ancient mathematicians from Europe, India, and China. Astronomy also relied heavily on the legacy of the Golden Age. Al-Biruni, another genius from the territory of modern Uzbekistan, mathematically proved the rotation of the Earth on its axis and around the Sun. He was a close friend of Avicenna and often consulted him on physics and cosmology. Al-Biruni was one of the first to suggest that stars are gigantic fiery bodies, calculated the Earth's circumference with astonishing accuracy, a method still bearing his name, knew 8 languages, and recorded the names of plants, terms, and objects in multiple languages, allowing modern scientists to identify ancient names of herbs through his botanical and medical descriptions. Moving to more practical inventions, the list is equally impressive. From navigation to papermaking, the very word admiral entered European languages from Arabic. In Europe, paper was long called Damascene or Baghdadi because the technology was brought from Arab workshops in Egypt and Iraq. Although originally borrowed from the Chinese, the Arabs became the bridge through which paper reached the West. In optics, a major contribution was made by Ibn al-Hazm, who lived at the turn of the 10th to 11th centuries in Basra. His seminal work, Book of Optics, is often placed alongside Newton and Einstein in terms of scientific influence. Ibn al-Haytham analyzed ancient theories of vision, described the structure of the human eye with remarkable precision, proved that we see because light reflects off objects into the eye, not the other way around, as the Greeks thought, even suggested the finite speed of light, and conducted the first systematic experiments with the camera obscura. With such rapid scientific development, social dividends were inevitable. A prime example is the Islamic agricultural revolution. Agronomists developed highly efficient crop rotation and irrigation systems, allowing 2 to 3 harvests per year. Many of these methods later reached Europe and partially survive to this day. Even in distant fields like the precursors of nuclear physics, interesting ideas were present. Jabir ibn Hayyan Cheber, considered the father of chemistry, already in the 8th to 9th centuries suggested the existence of atoms, and that their splitting could release colossal energy capable of destroying an entire city like Baghdad, 1,000 years before experimental confirmation of atoms. In nearly all European universities of the Renaissance, the majority of textbooks and teaching materials were translations or adaptations of works by Arab scholars. Ulugh Beg's astronomical tables from Samarkand were more accurate than anything available until Tycho Brahe in the 16th century, and Brahe studied them. The length of the solar year was calculated with an error of only 58 seconds, and the tilt of the Earth's axis with an error of less than 5 arc minutes. One of the most valuable aspects for which we owe thanks to the scholars of that era is their universality and openness. They translated, preserved, and developed works from India, China, Persia, Greece, Rome, and even ancient Egypt, saving humanity's scientific heritage at a time when much of it was lost in Europe. Of course, the Arab Caliphate, like any empire in history, had its serious shortcomings and problems, and there were many. But for some reason, in the popular historical consciousness, the focus is almost always on these flaws, while the grand achievements in science, medicine, philosophy, and culture often remain in the shadows. We sincerely hope that this account has helped you broaden your horizons and see that era in a new light. If you found the material useful and interesting, we would truly appreciate your likes, comments, and questions. Until next time, friends.